One of my favorite Revit commands is the camera view. Now, the camera view is exactly what it sounds like. You're holding a camera and you're taking a picture of your building. And when you do this, you'll be able to see what that picture would look like if you were standing at that spot at your construction site. In this case, we're going to place 3 separate cameras inside of our building. The first spot where we want to place a camera will be out here, and we'll be taking a shot of our building looking in this direction. The second spot we'll take a picture from will be inside of the building, and we'll take a look at the walls and the doors and the windows, anything that might show up inside of that particular view. Then we'll create another camera view that'll be on the outside of our building, and we'll be looking straight up the wall so we get a feel for what the building will look like as we're approaching it and we're getting very close to entering through the front doors. To begin, come underneath the View tab on the ribbon, over here to 3D View, and select on the word Camera. When you do this, you'll get a little camera icon, and that'll follow your mouse around on the screen. We need to look underneath the Options bar where it says Offset Distance. In this case, it's going to be standing at the 5-foot 6-inch elevation mark with the camera. So that's where we'll be holding the camera in our hands. It's 5 foot 6 inches off of the ground. And you can adjust that if you want to. Also, where we're going to take the picture from is going to be level 1. But I will point out that we can use any of the levels that are currently designated in our plan. So we could be standing on the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, up on the top floor, and surveying our building from that particular elevation or from that location. Here though, I want to be on level 1, stand out here at the outside of my site, and then click once in order to place the camera. Now move your mouse in the general direction of your building. The important thing here is making sure that your entire building is inside of this triangular cone that's showing up as you're moving your mouse around. If you would stop it short, all you'll get is that little corner or the outside of your building. But anything that shows up inside of the cone will show up inside of your picture. So by clicking way out here, we'll get a picture that goes way out to the outer extent of our building. And we can see everything that we'd be able to take a picture of from that spot looking in that direction. Now let's take a look at this with a little bit of color associated with it. On the bar going across the bottom, there's an option called Visual Style. Select on the Visual Style button and change that to Shaded. This is going to add color to our glass. Give our masonry units here on our interior walls that gray color that they're supposed to have. Now, let's take a look at this kind of view from the interior. Once again, we want to click here on this X up in the corner, and then place a camera looking from here over in this direction. So, underneath the View tab, 3D View, select on Camera. Click once, do your cone, and then click somewhere in this general area. It doesn't have to be exactly where I'm clicking, but out here toward the outside of your building. When you do this, you'll see your different curtain walls that are on the inside, the doors, some of the walls that are expanding up multiple floors, as well as different columns that are available there. And if we want to see this in color, once again, we can come down, select on the box, change the shaded, and see the different colors for the interior of our building. This is going to come into play especially when we start dropping in our floors and our ceilings. This will allow us to envision the way that the floors, the ceilings, the lights, everything that we design is going to look inside of our structure. Now we need to create one more view. So come out here to the outside and click on the X. Something you may have noticed is that those previous 2 cameras, the one we placed over here and the one that we did here inside of the building, are no longer showing up. If we want to see those cameras again so we have a better idea as to where we're taking the pictures from, or maybe we even need to adjust those cameras after the fact, move over here underneath the project browser, select on one of these 3D views. In this case, I'm selecting on 3D View 2, which will be the camera here in this location on the interior of the building. Right-click when it's just been selected on once, and select on Show Camera. Then if we needed to move this camera, you could just click on it and drag it to whichever location you'd like it to be at. But I like it where it was at, so I'm just going to let go right back at the spot where it was sitting at before. Now let's create that one more 3D view. 3D Views and Camera. Stand somewhere in this area and click. What we want to do is look straight up, but the easiest way to do this is to place our cone first and then tell it that we want to look straight up afterwards. Move your cone out in this direction and then click once you get to the other side of the building. Now we're just looking through the wall Instead, though, we want to point the camera up toward wherever the roof is at. So to accomplish that, we need to come underneath the properties, and with this outline still highlighted in blue, that means that we're looking now at the properties of our camera view. The eye elevation is where we were standing with the camera. That was the 5'6" I pointed here on the options bar. The target elevation is where we've been clicking whenever we've placed that cone. So the middle of that cone, that's where the target elevation is currently located at. Well, I'd like that target elevation to be way up in the air. So let's create a extremely high target elevation. In this case, 300 feet should do it, and select on apply. By doing this, we're now looking 300 feet straight up in the air. We can see now what the exterior of our curtain wall is going to look like if we're standing down near the base, down where the doors are at the front of our building. And of course, by coming down to the visual style, you can change this to be shaded so that you can see the different colors of the glass as well as the current color of the mullions. So cameras are used as a design tool to be able to visualize either the exterior of the building or the interior of the buildings. This will aid us when we're going through the design process to be able to see whether or not we have our flooring material the way that we like it, our ceilings in the right locations, our light fixtures located in proper spots so that the design looks complete and looks natural and looks the way that we want it to be. Sometimes when you are working on a project, you will have the need to duplicate the information from one view into a new view. An example would be two floor plans at the same level. To create this duplicate, move your cursor over to the project browser, expand out floor plans, then select on Level 1. Right-click on Level 1, highlight Duplicate View, then select Duplicate with Detailing. Duplicate with Detailing creates an exact copy of that view, much like if you had a piece of paper and you put it through a copy machine. So select on Duplicate with Detailing, and now we can see we have a new duplicate view underneath the project browser, and it's called Level 1 Copy 1. We can rename this view by right-clicking on it, coming down to Rename, then call it Duplicate with Detailing. Then click on OK. If we look at Level 1, by just double-clicking on Level 1, we can see that this is the same view as the Duplicate with Detailing view, with the same information inside of it. What occurs now is if a piece of information should change in Duplicate with Detailing, then that information will not change in Level 1, assuming that that information is a piece of text or some kind of annotation. If we zoom in the Duplicate with Detailing view, so that we can see the number 7 in the doorway, and we zoomed in by just spinning the wheel on the mouse, we could then select on the number 7, which is a piece of annotation. And if you click and hold your mouse button down on it, you can then move the mouse to the side to move the number 7 over. This annotation symbol is now only moved inside of the Duplicate with Detailing view. If we look at Level 1, then zoom in by spinning the wheel on our mouse, we can see that the number 7 is still in the same location. But any three-dimensional object that gets changed will update in both views. If we zoom out by spinning the wheel on the mouse, then zoom in on this wall between the two bathrooms, we can then select on this wall, then click this arrow right here, and those double arrows have now moved that bathroom wall over to the other side. It's flipped the bathroom wall's face from being on the right-hand side to the left-hand side of the wall. If we look at the Duplicate with Detailing view, we can see that that change has also occurred with this wall inside of this view because a wall is a three-dimensional object. There are two other kinds of duplicating that we can do. Move your cursor over and once again select on Level 1, right-click, and this time move your cursor down, highlight over Duplicate View, but now select on Duplicate. You will notice that all the annotation is now gone. There are certain things such as these elevation tags, as well as the column grids, which stay around. All the dimensions, any pieces of text, all of the tags for the doors and windows have now went away because when you just duplicate a view, it makes a duplicate of all the three-dimensional information. If we change any of the three-dimensional information, it will update in all the views. But by doing a duplicate, it gets rid of the text, dimensions, those sorts of things, so that we can now create such things as furniture plans or interior finish plans. The third kind of duplicating that we can do is if we once again move our cursor up to level 1, right-click on level 1, move down to Duplicate View, then Duplicate as a Dependent. We can see that it has now created a new view directly underneath level 1. Let's do this one more time. So once again, right-click on level 1, Duplicate View, and Duplicate as a Dependent. What dependent views allow you to do is make a change inside of the main view, and then that change will show up in both of the views that have been duplicated. Or vice versa is true. If you make a change in one of the dependent views, then that change will show up inside of the other view. This is sometimes needed if you have a view that's too long for a sheet and you need to make that view shorter so that that view can then show on one sheet and then another view can show on another sheet. An example of this would be if we right-click on either one of these dependent views, go down the rename, then call this left, click on OK, rename the other one by right-clicking on its title, going to rename, typing in right. We now have a left-hand view and a right-hand view. If we zoom out with this view, making sure that left is currently selected, we can now select on this box that goes around the view. This is called the crop region. Then click on this dot and pull it in. Now we just have the building on the left-hand side. If we click on this dot here, we can further crop it in. If we double-click on right, we can see that we have the view that has all the information in it. Once again, select on that box, grab onto that dot, pull it over. You can pull it over again. Now we have the other building over on the right-hand side, and that could be on the right-hand sheet. And finally, while we're here, go to the level 1 copy one, select on that. This is the view that we called duplicate, or that we actually just made a duplicate of. We want to call it duplicate. So let's right-click on that view name, move down the rename, and now name this view duplicate, and select on OK. Revit allows you to do what's called tile your windows so that you can see multiple views at the same time. To do this, we first need to have multiple views open. So if you don't already have multiple views open, come over here underneath the project browser and double-click on a few of these views, just so that you can have more than one view open at a time. In this case, I've opened up my levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even though we can only see one of these views at a time, really, all 4 of these views are open simultaneously. Now, to be able to tile them so that we can see them, underneath the View tab, over here above the word Windows, there are a couple different options. One is Cascade Windows. If you select on Cascade Windows, you'll be able to see each of your individual views, and they're cascaded down the list. If you have a view that was minimized, such as what this one was, you can select on this button here, which is the first one, which is Restore Up, and then select on Cascade Windows, and you'll be able to see all 4 of those views at the same time. Now, at this point, you could take the time to move these around on the screen by just dragging on the titles up at the top. Also, the second you select on any of the titles going across the top, that becomes the active view, and any properties that are associated with that particular view will change and update as you select on that view. But the other option that we had was to tile the windows. So instead of having them overlapping each other and you manually having to adjust them so that they all fit on your screen, if you select on tile, it will automatically try to tile each of these windows. And then you can zoom in and zoom out of each of these different views the way you'd like to on the screen. Now, to be honest, I rarely have 3 or 4 of these open like I do currently. Even 3, such as this condition here, would be a fairly rare thing for me to do. That I'm just going to click the X here in order to close one of these windows. What I usually have though is I'll have one open and then I'll have a second one open. So I'm going to close my level 4 as well as my level 3 views by just clicking on the X up in the corner. Then I'm going to click on my 3D view icon up at the top of the screen, and then select on Tile Windows. By doing this, if I make a change in the 3D view, I'll be able to see what that change would look like here in my plan view. And vice versa is true as well. If I make a change in my plan view, I'd then be able to see that change over here in my 3D view. Now, I don't want to make a major change to my model. I kind of like it the way that it is. But just to demonstrate that, if underneath the Architecture tab, you move down and select on the picture of the wall. Then here in your plan view, click one spot, move over, and then click another spot. When you do this, you'll automatically see another curtain wall show up over here on the side. That's that curtain wall that you just drew in this view. If you decided to move over to your 3D view and then move the curtain wall, you'll see that that updates over here in your floor plan view. And if you delete it, and you can delete it by either hitting the delete key on the keyboard or clicking on the red X up here, or just right-clicking and then going to delete, you'll see that it deletes it in both views simultaneously. So, by coming underneath View and selecting on Tile Windows, you can have multiple views open at the same time and be able to see those changes if you're working in one view in the other views that might be affected by those changes.